The false matrix. Let's share some more details. That's what I want to do today. I want to give you more insight into the detail of the false matrix, because when you see it, you understand it, you transcend it. When we see the behavior that we thought was our nature, but was in fact induced as opposed to organic, then we're going to start to make more sense to ourselves, and we're going to start to understand that the true nature of the true organic human is gold, divinity, spectacular, miraculous even. So there's our true nature and there's this imposed nature. Where did that come from? Well, the false matrix was a broadcast system. I've got a video up here on my channel. Just type in Kerry K, false matrix broadcast system. You're going to find the video. And it was all about exactly that, how the false matrix was this continual bombardment that went into our DNA, informing us of who we are from a very corrupted, very distorted standpoint. I'm going to give you lots of examples in today's conversation about what that distortion and those illusions looked like. But there's this saying, and I have no doubt you've heard it. It sounds pretty legit, and it sounds like something you want to nod your head to and be in agreement with. As above, so below. But that was a trick of the false matrix, and I'm going to explain to you why. From the perspective of the false matrix as that broadcast system, so go watch the video that I've mentioned to give you more insight into that. From the perspective of the false matrix informing the body and therefore humanity of their own behavior and not allowing the natural innate wisdom of the human to emerge, in fact, to disconnect the human from that, the broadcast system was continually disrupting our cellular communication and, more importantly, disrupting our connection to divinity. So what we were looking at was, for want of a better way of describing it, what we were looking at when we looked, metaphorically, to God or to the heavens, we were looking to a ceiling. We were looking to the roof, shall we say, of the broadcast system. And I have no doubt that many flat earthers are going to get very excited right now and go, oh, Kerry's talking about the dome. She's talking about... No, I'm not. Just don't put words in my mouth. I'm not talking about flat earth in case anybody gets excited. I don't believe that the earth is flat. I believe it's multidimensional. And I believe we have no idea what multidimensional even means. We have one lens, which is 3D. And we're trying to understand and observe a multi-dimensional, miraculous, dynamic field of energy through the lens of 3D. We simply cannot. And yes, the false matrix was a closed system. And there are many places where that's visible. But that is not the totality of who we are. The totality of who we are exists way beyond the veil of the false matrix. The ceiling that I'm speaking about, okay? Again, this is a metaphorical ceiling that I'm talking about. When we looked to the heavens, we were looking to and seeing the reflection of the broadcast system. So we were, when we thought that we were getting higher information, a lot of the time, what were we getting? When we thought that we were connecting to divinity, a lot of the time, what were we actually connecting with? Sometimes a sliver of that divinity, sometimes a waft or a hint of it, and other times sheer distortion of it. To the point where we began to say things like, as within, so without. But the false matrix was the other way around. The false matrix was as without. In other words, as the broadcast signal was, so within. So we were being programmed from without. We were being programmed from above. Now, what happens when above is this distorted broadcast system? Then below, meaning us, as above, so below. As the broadcast signal was, this is what we became imprinted to. So again, let's get specific now. Let's get into detail to understand what this means. There were so many distorted, and they still float around. You're going to recognize them in some of the examples I give you, and I'd love you to share your own, because when I speak, I've got no doubt you're going to go, ooh, what about this one? What about that one? So let me hear them in your comments below. In order for the human being to have more, or to even be more. Let's start with that. This is how many people behaved. In order for me to be more, I must make you less. In other words, I must put you down so that I can rise up. I must take something away so that I can have more. We had all of these distorted ideas, and people didn't walk around, as I've just said it, we didn't walk around saying those words. We walked around behaving that, because as above, so below. As the broadcast signal was booming out, all of the distortions based upon who the architects of the false matrix were, based on that distortion, that psychopathy, we were absorbing, inhaling, living in the toxic soup of all of that misinformation, believing it was our nature. So no wonder we thought so poorly of ourselves. No wonder we thought so poorly of each other, because we couldn't access the divinity within. Therefore, we couldn't access the divinity in others either. When we start connecting to our innate divinity, I have spoken about this before, then we become the broadcast signal. At that point, you know what we feel like? This is a really good visual. Imagine a snow globe. And imagine there's this moment that I turn the snow globe the right way up. So if it's upside down, which is where we've been living in the false matrix, and I were to turn that snow globe the right way up, there's a moment where you're going to feel like there's dust flying, debris flying, everything's in your face. Which way is up? The world's gone insane. Who am I? What am I? Oh my gosh, the dreams and goals I once had, I'm no longer interested in. I'm listless. I've lost my ambition. There must be something wrong with me. That's our go-to in life. Because the snow globe, which is the metaphor for where we are right now, the snow globe, our reality, is being turned the right way up, but we've lived with it upside down for so long. So we've got these upside down ideas, these distorted viewpoints of what it takes to be a winner, for example, in life. What did we think was going to make us a winner? It would be for somebody else to lose. It would be for us to do things like control our emotions, or perhaps to appear to be strong through the eyes of somebody else. That is what we thought winning was. Consequence never was really part of the equation. It was never relevant. It was only, did you reach the finish line first? Instead of, how much integrity did you cross the finish line with? How much of your authenticity did you walk the journey of life with? Now, those are the things that in the organic matrix, in other words, in the divine organic creation template from whence we come, that's God's world. We're originally part of that organic divine creation template. That is who we are in our innate beauty. We are beings of divinity and authenticity and balance and harmony. And those are the things that matter in the world that we're recreating. And because they matter in the world that we're recreating, they need to start becoming matter to you now. In other words, becoming more solid to you now. In other words, becoming more real for you now. So place value. You do this. Don't wait for the world to do it. Because you see, false matrix style, we always waited for the external to direct us. Now we've got to direct from within. So now we get to reorientate and redesign reality based around what matters to ourselves as the individual. So we lived in a world where there was so much misery and misfortune without consequence. We lived in that world where people could perpetrate behaviors that makes your hair stand on end, and mine. People perpetrated those behaviors and they seemed to get away with it, because in the inverted matrix, the false matrix, that's really what its lifeblood was. It was all based upon a perversion of light, an aversion to truth. So let's look at more of those examples, right? Let's look at freedom. All of these upside down behaviors, all of these distorted ideas. What did we think freedom was? We misunderstood freedom because we were seeing everything in reverse. One day, guys, one day, you're going to come to terms with, each of us will, come to terms with all the lies. Because there are those of you watching right now, you're going to say to me, Kerry, I already know everything that there is to know. I've seen through all the lies. My angels, none of us have. In truth, none of us have. It's going to take us the equivalent of the lifetime we've lived to come to see all that was truly, actually, really upside down and distorted. You know, freedom is an example of one of those reversals where we thought the less responsibility we've got, the freer we are. I am free because I got nothing to worry about. I am free because I got no responsibility. That's the definition of an imprisonment. Do you know why? Because personal responsibility, which again, we have so much distortion and confusion around in a world where everything was upside down, in a world where we had all that was upside down, in other words, all of the darkness. We had that on top. We were busy absorbing that as truth, taking that into ourselves and seeing that as gospel in many cases. And in many cases, I mean that quite literally, gospel was distorted. In other words, religions, every religion has got elements of truth in it. There must be, because that's how it becomes believable. But there are so many elements of that distorted matrix interwoven into it. But responsibility, personal responsibility, which very few people understand, has got nothing to do with blame, has got everything to do with power. Responsibility is the ability to respond. In other words, it's my ability to have potency. It's my ability to take action in my world, my ability to respond to something. So we were entrained to believe that responsibility was burdensome. We were entrained to believe that responsibility was punishment, was blame. So we avoided it like the plague. Meantime, back at the ranch, responsibility is your ticket to freedom. Responsibility is how you overcome circumstances. You first have to connect to them. Part of responsibility, connect to them. We were taught to be in total aversion and non-acceptance of the things that we didn't like. So we were living in a perpetual state of repelling, pushing things away from us that we didn't want to deal with, suppressing them, denying them. So the more we lived in that world trying to control our emotions, the more our emotions were controlling us, because that's what happens. Again, look at this. Everywhere, every which way we look, as I describe this to you, we're going to see more and more untruths, more and more distortions. And as we move closer to our right way up, in other words, to the organic reality that we come from, we're going to go, oh my gosh, how did we ever survive there? How did we ever maintain that beautiful thread of divinity? How did we maintain that? Because we all have that, by the way. We all have, albeit that we were born into this inverted matrix, we all have that thread of divinity within us, which is why we know something in us, right from wrong. Why we know, even when we haven't been taught and haven't been shown, there is still that innate goodness within us. In some cases it was nurtured, in other cases it was denied, but that's something we were all born with, just that little glimmering thread of divinity, and a world, an absolute world bombarding us with more and more distortions. Abundance is a great one, money. So we began to conflate those two things, abundance and money. We began to see them as the same thing without realizing that the monetary system was really a greed system. And what is greed? Greed is the opposite of abundance. If abundance is there's enough for everyone, that's what abundance is not there's enough. Abundance is there's more than enough. There's more than you will ever need. We were taught that that was wasteful, number one, but we were taught that that simply is a fallacy. There's not more than enough. We lived in a world of not enough. We didn't feel like we were enough. We didn't have enough, whether it was not enough food, not enough confidence, not enough love, not enough something. So we distilled all of that into a distorted version of ourselves in which we weren't enough. And the more that we live in not enough, the more we live in this fertile breeding ground for greed. Because that's what greed is. Greed is the idea that there is not enough. So because there's not enough, I got to take and take. And no, not everyone who does not have enough is going to step into greed, but a lot of people will. And it's those people that when they do have enough, they can't comprehend. They cannot comprehend what enough is because something in them is not satiated. And that's what greed is. Greed is, I'm always on the lookout for the next and the next and the next because I cannot absorb what I've already got. And do you know how many people alive right now cannot absorb nutrients? Big problem in the world. So we've got people spending a fortune on superfoods and smoothies and crazy stuff without the ability to actually absorb. And do you know why we've lost the ability to absorb? Because we've lost the ability to integrate. Because we've lost the ability to energetically connect with and be with ourselves. So what we can't do at the energetic level, it's going to come down to the physical level. It's going to express itself at the physical level too. So when we can't integrate at the energetic level, we can't digest at the physical level, or at least we begin to lose our potency in that regard. So sure, we can digest, but not to the degree that we need. So we're not absorbing on every level. The energetic level, because we're spending so much time pushing things away from us, so much time in resistance to life, so much time in denial of who we are, what we actually feel, because we've been programmed not to feel. Now, what happens when, more reversals, what happens when we are a being of energy? Which is another way of saying we are beings of emotion. Emotion is naturally what we participate in, not who we are, but what we experience as a being of energy, because emotions are simply waves of energy. So think of yourself as the swimmer, and the sea that you swim in is emotions. You can't say, I am the sea, but you can say, I'm swimming in the sea. In other words, you can say, I'm experiencing these emotions. They're not the definition of me, but because of our ability to feel emotions, we have the ability to discharge emotions, but we lose that when we don't feel them. And most people that I work with have no idea how to discharge an emotion because they've got no idea how to be with an emotion. They know how to analyze an emotion. They know how to suppress an emotion. They know how to condemn an emotion. They know how to judge an emotion. They don't know how to be because we were so entrained by that system of reversals, as above, so below. Don't feel. You as an energetic being, if you're cut off from feeling, you're cut off from self. And then you become overly analytical and stuck in the analysis and stuck in linearity and wondering why you feel empty, when the fullness of you, the totality of you is lying absolutely unexplored. There are so many people that thought that to get ahead, they've got to pull somebody else behind them. There are so many people of these mindsets where everything they try to do to further themselves, they're actually putting themselves back. There's this tipping point where all of the illusions and the delusions begin to dissolve. And when they do, you will not know who you are. Because so much of that broadcast signal was conflated and confused for you. Now, as you let all of this go, you realize what really matters. Honor, self-honor, integrity, authenticity. And again, it's authenticity with self. Part of that reversal system made us afraid of authenticity because authenticity and vulnerability are totally interlinked. And in the system of reversals, we were taught never to be vulnerable. And do you know what vulnerable is? Vulnerable is simply the true self. That's what vulnerability is. It is you without defensiveness. It is you without the walls, without the barricades. In fact, we were taught in pop psychology, and it's still being taught today, put up boundaries, more of that reversal stuff. Because the truth is, when you've activated your divinity becomes, from within you, it becomes a shield. You don't put up a wall around you here. You light yourself up by connecting to your presence. This is part of what I teach in my online community. Occupy your space. Occupy your light. Get into the embodiment. Feel, connect, bring yourself into divine presence and watch how that emanates around you into a magnificent field of protection. That's called trusting your light. So again, are you starting to see the big picture here? Are you starting to see more detail of how the false matrix kept humanity in this encapsulated space? But it wasn't just an encapsulated space. It was an upside down space where we began to see good as bad. We began to see right as wrong. We began to see lies as truth. There's a whole lot that's going to start making more sense to you now as you start to see that everything that we were shown, everything that we were taught was part of that upside down way of being. So each person, as we come the right way up, as we come into our divine alignment, we begin to melt the glue of the false matrix. We begin to melt the false matrix itself. I'm going to leave more information for you on the false matrix. In case you haven't watched the videos, I've got a whole playlist for you. But watch the video that I'm going to put up here next. From my heart all the way into yours. I do hope you feel it. Lots of love, everyone. Bye-bye for now.